Testing, testing, 1, 2, 3, testing. I'm about to go back and listen. Hold up. Wait, test, 1, 2, 3. I'm moving the mic down to about what is this, like my wisdom tooth? Maybe a little lower. I don't know. This probably sounds good. The other one sound kind of buzzy. Hold up. All right, I think we good. We are live. This is revamped 10,000 scriptures. I'm gonna go by Doc. We're gonna get right into it. So pretty much what we're gonna do is I'm gonna read the chapter right now. Right now we're in Luke 7. This is a new way I'm doing this. Before I was reading it, taking notes, writing down key verses, and then going back and doing research on that. But that took way too much time, and I think that we should just get right into the word. So I'm gonna read the chapter. I'm gonna notate some verses that stick out to me while I'm working. And then I'll do some research on those verses. We'll kind of talk about what the chapter was talking about, and then we'll get right into it. Hopefully you enjoy it. If you don't, keep moving. So right now we're in chapter 7 of Luke, and we're going to read about the faith of the centurion. So I'm reading the NIV version. Wait, is this NIV? Yes, NIV, study Bible. I like the study Bible. Chapter 7, verse 1. When Jesus had finished saying all this to the people who were listening, he entered Capernaum. There, a centurion servant whom his master valued highly was sick and about to die. The centurion heard of Jesus and sent some elders of the Jews to him, asking him to come and heal his servant. When they came to Jesus, they pleaded earnestly with him. Now, hold on, wait a second. So the centurion is Roman. He's a Roman like soldier, head of an army, century, 100. So he got like at least 100 groups, 100 men, 100 people. There's a 100 of something under this person. A centurion soldier who's Roman. Now he sent some elders of the Jews. So he reached out. Let me see, Luke. I got my notes formatted a certain way, and I'm messing all up because I'm excited. I'm excited to do this new way. At the time, I'm going to just do some rundown for you. At the time, the Jewish elders were like mayors of the town as it related to the Jewish people. They didn't really have any, they didn't have the same, they still had to fall under the Roman rule who was ruling at the time, but they handled a lot of the affairs of the people. So this would be like one leader going to another. The Roman centurion going to the Jewish elders and saying, I need you to reach out to Jesus. Now, if you keep in mind, I haven't done this, is my first one doing this version, but in other chapters, we see that a lot of the Jewish elders didn't really care for Jesus because he was challenging their power, challenging the way that they were teaching the people. He was doing a lot of things to kind of put their authority at risk. And so for a Roman centurion to reach out to these people who already don't like Jesus to say, yo, get Jesus to come heal my daughter, it's kind of like a slap in the face because it's like, Dad, we can't heal your daughter anyway. I'm going to keep reading. And then I said I wasn't going to do this. I said I was going to wait until the very end. But like I said, I get a little hype. So we're going to keep going. Chapter 3, I'm going to run that back. The centurion heard of Jesus and sent some elders of the Jews to him, asking him to come heal his servant. When they came to Jesus, they pleaded earnestly with him. This man deserves to have you do this because he loves our nation and has built our synagogue. So Jesus went with them. All right. So Jesus went with them. He was not far from the house where the centurion sent friends to say to him, Lord, don't trouble yourself, for I do not deserve to have you come under my roof. This is why I did not even consider myself worthy to come to you, but say the word and my servant will be healed. For I myself am a man under authority with soldiers under me. I tell this one, go, and he goes, and that one, come, and he comes. I say to my servant, do this, and he does it. When Jesus heard this, he was amazed at him and turned to the crowd following him. He said, I tell you, I have not found such great faith even in Israel. Important. Where are we at? 9. Faith in Israel. All right, perfect. 10. Then the men who had been sent returned to the house and found the servant well. Okay. Soon after, Jesus went to a town called Nain. Now listen, I'm going to say a bunch of names, a bunch of cities that I might not be pronouncing correctly, but I don't care. I mean, I do care, and I'll correct it as I go. But for the moment, I don't care. The point is that hopefully you're also reading along or listening along, or if you're in the car, you plan on reading along, because I hope you're not reading while you're driving. But if you go back, you'll see the names that I'm saying. So this looks like rain, and I'm going to say it like rain because it looks like rain without the R. It has an N instead. So it's Nain. Jesus went to a town called Nain, and his disciples and a large crowd went with him. As he approached the town gate, a dead person was being carried out. The only son of a mother, and she was a widow. Good Lord. So she didn't have no men in her life. No men in her life. This is important for the time. We'll go back and talk about it. And a large crowd from the town was with her. When the Lord saw her, his heart went out and said, good Lord, let me go back. 13, when the Lord saw her, his heart went out to her, and he said, don't cry. Then he went up and touched the bier they were carrying him on, and the bearers stood still. He said, young man, I say to you, get up. The dead man sat up and began to talk, and Jesus gave him back to his mother. They were all filled with awe and praised God. A great prophet has appeared among us, they said. God has come to his people. The news about Jesus spread throughout Judea and the surrounding country. John's disciples told him all these things. Calling two of them, John, calling his two of the disciples, he sent them to the Lord and asked, are you the one who is to come, or should we expect someone else? All right, this is kind of spicy. All right, so now we're in 19. And then we see John versus Jesus. Sorry, I hit the mic. When the men came to Jesus, they asked, John the Baptist sent us to come to you and ask, are you the one who is come, or should we expect someone else? At that very time, Jesus cured many who had diseases, sickness, and evil spirits, and gave sight to many who were blind. So he replied to the messengers, go back and report to John what you have seen and heard. The blind receive sight, the lame walk, those who have leprosy are cleansed, the deaf hear, the dead are raised, and the good news is proclaimed to the poor. Blessed is anyone who does not stumble on account of me. Now, that's interesting. I wonder what that means. Blessed is anyone who does not stumble on account of me. Okay, I don't know what that means. We're going to read it. 24. After John's messengers left, Jesus began to speak to the crowd about John. What did you go out to the wilderness to see? A reed swayed by the wind? If not, what did you go see? A man dressed in fine clothes? No. Those who wear expensive clothes and indulge in luxury are in palaces. But what did you go out to see? A prophet? Yes, I tell you, and more than a prophet. This is the one whom it was written, I will send my messenger ahead of you, who will prepare your way before you. I tell you, among those born of women there is no one greater than John, yet the one who is least in the kingdom of God is greater than he. All the people, even the tax collectors, when they heard Jesus' words, acknowledged that God's way was right, because they had been baptized by John. But the Pharisees and the experts in the law rejected God's purpose for themselves, because they had not been baptized by John. So right here, all right, so this is kind of meaty right here, but I'm going to stop at 29. And then baptized versus unbaptized. All right, so yeah, I read some heavy stuff. We're gonna go back to it though. 31. Jesus went on to say, to what then can I compare the people of this generation? What are they like? They're like children sitting in the marketplace and calling out to each other. We played the pipe for you, and you did not dance. We sang a dirge, I don't know what that is, and you did not cry. For John the Baptist came neither eating bread nor drinking wine, and you say he is a demon. The Son of Man came eating and drinking, and you say here is a glutton and a drunkard, a friend of the tax collectors and a sinner. But wisdom is proved right by all her children. Whoa, that's heavy. Now listen, I'm gonna go back into this. I'm not no scholar of the Bible. I'm not a preacher. I didn't study this. I'm just a guy who understands that he needs to read the Bible, and the Bible is going to impact my life in a way where I'm going to get understanding from it, especially if God has called me to do this thing, which I don't want to do really. God has called me to do this thing, and I'm just being obedient. He's going to give me the wisdom and the understanding in order to get the message out there for everyone else. All right, so Jesus anointed by a sinful woman. So now we're in verse 36. We're almost done here. When the Pharisees invited Jesus to have dinner with him, he went to the Pharisee's house and reclined at the table. A woman in that town who lived a sinful life learned that Jesus was eating at the Pharisee's house, so she came there with an alabaster jar of perfume. As she stood behind him at his feet wiping, she began to wet his feet with her tears. Then she wiped them with her hair, kissed them, and poured perfume on them. When the Pharisee who had invited him saw this, he said to himself, If this man were a prophet, he would know who is touching him. Let me go back. 39. When this Pharisee who had invited him saw this, he said to himself, if this man were a prophet, he would know who is touching him and what kind of woman she is, that she is a sinner. Jesus answered him, Simon, I have something to tell you. Tell me, teacher, he said. 2 people owed money to a certain moneylender. One of them 500 denarii and the other 50. Neither of them had the money to pay him back, so he forgave their debts of both. Now, which of them will love him more? Simon replied, I suppose the one who had the bigger debt forgiven. You have judged correctly, Jesus said. When he turned toward the woman, that's funny. You have judged correctly. When he turned toward the woman and said to Simon, do you see this woman? I came to your house. You did not give me any water for my feet, but she wet my feet with her tears and wiped them with her hair. You did not give me a kiss, but this woman from the time I entered has not stopped kissing my feet. You did not put oil on my head, but she has poured perfume on my feet. Therefore, I tell you, her many sins have been forgiven, as her great love has shown. But whoever has been forgiven little loves little. But whoever has been forgiven little loves little. Then Jesus said to her, your sins are forgiven. The other guests began to say among themselves, who is this who even forgives sins? Jesus said to the woman, your faith has saved you. Go in peace. All right. That was rough. I am sorry for those who had to listen to me read. But y'all will be all right. And like I said, I'm getting better. So my reading skills are going to get better. All right, let's dig into this. So right now, let's talk about the Roman centurion. Let's go back and run that story back. Okay, so Jesus and his disciples are going into Capernaum. Now, from what I understand, Capernaum is like a pretty big city. And like I said, at the time, the Romans were ruling Israel, and the Roman population was like a melting pot, just like how America is today. America is full of different cultures, ethnicities, different people, and so it wouldn't be uncommon for. Listen, I'm assuming. This is the research that I've done in the past, and a little bit of what I remember. So don't light me up if I'm wrong on this. But Capernaum was a big city. I'll just say that. So this centurion had a servant who was about to die, and he didn't even feel worthy to go to Jesus. Probably because of the things that he's done. I mean, he's a soldier, you know what I mean? And so, David couldn't build the temple of God because he had too much blood on his hands, and God asked him to do a lot of that killing and stuff like that. And so he probably was like, I can't go to this man. I'm not the same religion. I don't even know much about him. I'm trying to change my life, but I can't go to him. So I'm going to have some people go on my behalf. And that's exactly what he did. They said, meaning the Jewish elders said, this man deserves to have you do this because he loves our nation and has built our synagogue. Jesus is not a respecter of persons. These Jewish elders are showing that they're a respecter of persons, meaning this person did a favor for us, so you should do a favor for him. And that's not how Jesus works. Jesus works off of faith. Now, each book of the gospel has a different focus, but from what I've been reading in Luke, it's the main point is that, well, Luke is supposed to be spread to the Gentiles. And the main point of getting a relationship with Jesus and having a relationship with God is your faith. It's not about what you do. It's not about your actions. Your actions help. I mean, sure, like, faith without works is dead. But overall, it's about faith. And this man, his heart was in a space of faith to say, I know Jesus can do this. I don't even have to go to him, as we see. He says, I don't even have to go. I could just send word that I'm a man of authority, I can send word to somebody specific that I'm looking for. I'll send it out. I don't have to go physically to them and say, yo, I need you to come. So come. He says, I go send people out. I go call this person. That person I call comes back to me. And it's by my word. And so, Jesus, as a person who has authority, I know that you can heal my servant based on your word. You send that word out to go get my servant healed, and that word is gone out. And that within itself is faith. It's not the fact that, oh, like, does Jesus have the ability to do it? This man knows that Jesus can do it based on maybe what he's heard about Jesus, what he's seen from other people, and something in his heart said that this guy is the one. No one had to tell him, yo, there's this guy, Jesus, out here, and if you give him, X, Y, and Z, then he'll heal your servant. This man in his heart knew. He had faith enough to know that if our system works this way, I know that the heavenly system that you're working with also works in the same way. And because of, even if it doesn't, this man had enough faith to know that Jesus could heal his servant just off the word. And that within itself is huge. We talk about, Jesus then goes on, like I said in verse 9, to say, I tell you, I've not found such great faith even in Israel. Now, going back to chapter 5, I believe. Yes. No. There was a point where Jesus, after he left, I don't know the verse or the chapter, but there was a point where Jesus, he comes back from the wilderness after being tempted by Satan. He was in the wilderness for 40 days, 40 nights, comes to the synagogue, and essentially tells he's preaching in the synagogue to his own people. And he pretty much says to them, it's going to be the Gentiles that have mad faith, not y'all. Like, y'all have a track record of not having faith. And so this word is for the Gentiles too. And they got mad at him. Jesus is doubling down on this by saying someone who's not even of Israel has more faith than anybody I've met in Israel, which is crazy. Anyway, so faith. Jesus raises a widow's son. So the dead man comes out and he's being carried by pallbearers essentially. And about the Jewish culture, it's unclean to touch anything. You are spiritually and ritually unclean if a person were to touch a dead carcass. So for Jesus to come and in verse 14 touch the object that this dead person was on made Jesus, in Jewish tradition and culture, unclean. But it said that this was interesting though. It said that did I write any notes? It said it was a dead. Oh yeah, unclean. It said that the Lord saw this and his heart went out to her. So something about this woman crying, Jesus felt empathy for that. I'm not sure what was in her heart, but Jesus has shown a track record of being able to see a lot more than just what's on the outside. And going back to, this woman being a widow already and her son dying, it would have been one for her in Jesus's culture. Like, pretty much women, had limited roles that they could do. They couldn't earn much. They couldn't work for much. And a lot of women relied on the men of their family to provide for them and to take care of them and to own land. And what possibly would have happened had this person stayed dead, whatever possessions this person owned, the woman, whatever she owned would have to be sold probably in order to, make ends for herself. She would have had to move if, let's say she was, she had been married and moved with her husband to his hometown, which is what usually happens. She might have had to move back home with her family to wherever they were. She might not even have money to travel back home. And so there's more on her mind than just her son. Sure, is her son dead? Yes, but her life is drastically changed by him being gone. Jesus says, don't cry. He goes up, he touches the man. Now he commands the man, young man, I say to you, get up. He is not like, he's not like, I breathe life into you. Like, he's telling the man, get up, as if the man is asleep and he's late for work. He's like, young man, get up. And he says it with such authority that it's almost like the expectation that he'll get up. He gets up, he starts talking. Jesus gives him back to the mother, and everybody's praising God. They call him a prophet, has appeared among us. Now, this isn't the first person who's been raised from the dead. There have been other prophets in the Bible who have raised people from the dead. So it's not a surprise that people liken Jesus to a prophet. God has come to help his people. This news about Jesus spread throughout Judea and the surrounding country. So, another version of Jesus, raising someone up from the dead, and then the news about him spreads. So then we see this like little beef with John and Jesus, you know what I mean? So at this point, just going back, John, he's been locked up for speaking bad about, was it Herod, who married his brother's wife? It was a weird story, but he shouldn't have done that. And, he got locked up for it essentially. And so he's been in prison for a little bit now. And, Jesus is starting to pop, you know what I'm saying? Like John is losing some authority and some of his followers to Jesus, because he's in jail. And so he might get a little like, a little ahead of himself. He might got a little too much dip on his chip, and it's talking like, yo, is this the one? I don't even know why he even says something like this. Is kind of crazy that he would be like, are you the one? Now we see back in Luke 1, I believe. Let me see. We see, yeah, Luke 1, from Luke 1 all the way up to like Luke 4, we see John as the guy. John is sent in Luke 1. It talks about John's like how he came to be, his parents, and how his parents found out about him. And the angel of the Lord was like, yo, this guy is going to be the one to set the way for the arrival of Jesus. And I'm sure he grew up with that. Maybe he did, maybe he didn't. But when he got of age, he knew who he was. He knew he was the person to prepare the way. He knew that he wasn't the end all be all, but the guy that kind of smoothed the path for everyone to get prepared for this new way of thinking. So that way Jesus can kind of come in, do what he needs to do, and then leave. And then the people were primed almost. Like it's almost like going outside when it's cold outside and warming your car up. You know what I mean? Like you warm your car up to get everything moving, going. You get the heat inside running. You know what I'm saying? So that way, when it's time to get in the car, you're not running that thing raw and it's all cold and the seats are all hard and like the engine's doing that rev up thing that it could have been doing while you were warming the car up. So now we see John is in prison, and as humans do, we get a little ahead of ourselves and we our pride takes over. And he's like, yo, are you the one, or like are we supposed to be expecting somebody else? Jesus is kind of cold with it because he completely ignores them. He goes back to doing what he was doing. And I'm assuming that they were just like sitting there waiting. So Jesus is watching. Jesus is like, it says all the things that he does. He gives the blind sight. He helps the lame to walk. He cleans leprosy. And other diseases. And all these things, right? All these things that have been written about him and what he would do. And I'm sure that was just like Jesus's way of being like, I'm doing what was written. So you could tell John that. But then when they go back to report to John what they had seen and heard, Jesus then goes back to the people and kind of helps John save face. And he goes, talks about John's like resume. Like, did you go out to the wilderness? Y'all have heard this guy before. Like this isn't new. You know who John is. You know he's done. You knew he was a crazy guy, but you knew that the word that he had was more than his crazy. Like, yeah, he was crazy, but you were thirsty for that word because that's what he gave you. Hold on, I'm still working, man, so I gotta sign in to work real quick, and I cannot walk and chew gum, so I gotta put my password in. Wrong password because I'm trying to walk and chew gum. I'm still here, y'all. I just got to sign in. I forgot. I was supposed to sign in like 20 minutes ago, and I just been reading the word. It's all y'all fault. Connect to that Wi-Fi. My job is pretty low-key, so it doesn't require much. Plus, I signed in much, much earlier than most of my team. So, not that it's an excuse. I need to be a better manager of my time. All right, we are good. All right, okay. All right, we're good. All right, let me get back. Let me get back to it. Let's get back to it. So Jesus shows off. All right, this is where it gets kind of weighty. All right. But what did you see? A prophet? Yes, I tell you, more than a prophet. This is the one whom it was written about. I will send my messenger ahead of you who will prepare the way before you. That was John's purpose. That's it. It wasn't to be the Messiah. It was to prime the people for the Messiah. I tell you, among those who are born of women, there is no one greater than John. So that role of being the one who prepares the way for the Messiah was a huge role. It was a big thing. It was like, I would say it was kind of like how Aaron was for Moses. Aaron was like the guy who was like the mouthpiece for Moses, but Moses gets the credit for being the one who listened to God and actually led the people out. Yet the one who is least in the kingdom of God is greater than he. Now, I don't know what that means. The one who is least in the kingdom of God is greater than he. That one's I'm assuming this is what I think. I could be wrong, but this is what I think. I think that Jesus is referring to the new way of thinking. A lot of times, you'll see, I think it was when Jesus was dying and the man who was being crucified next to him was like, yo, we deserve to be here, but you didn't do anything. Just remember me when you go into the kingdom. And Jesus says, this day you will be with me in paradise. I don't think it was always like that before Jesus. Before Jesus, I think there was a different way that the people of the kingdom of God were being, they were in Abraham's bosom, so to speak. You know what I mean? They were like, they didn't quite go to heaven, because there was no Jesus to kind of be that bridge, for them. But I think that Jesus is saying here, like, I'm the new way. And anybody who comes under the new way because of what John has said is greater than John, because they are new residents in this new way. Don't know if that makes sense. But I would love to hear comments about it, if it does or if it doesn't. Anyway, moving on. All the people, even the tax collectors. Now, I love how they kind of separate tax collectors. I'm going to give you a little bit of history about tax collectors. The Jewish people didn't like tax collectors. Number one, because according to their Jewish law, you're not supposed to charge interest on anything. So a lot of times, a person would get a loan, and over time, they would, there was no interest at that time. You would just get a loan, and then, you would pay it back. And then after 7 years, if you couldn't pay it back, whatever you had was wiped clean. So that way there was nobody who was, poor in the nation. That changed. There were now tax collectors and people who, were essentially loan sharks and all that kind of stuff, who were putting people in debt. So a tax collector would take the money from the people and give it back to the ruling powers of the time, and it was the Roman Empire. They were able to, they would take taxes based on what you own. So if you had land, property, cattle, anything that would give you profit, they would tax you based off that. Now, they could search your stuff, anybody. And it said, and in my research, it was saying that a tax collector was able to search anybody who was not a Roman lady, not a Roman woman, a Roman lady. So a Roman woman who had some nobility and some, some weight behind her name. You know what I'm saying? They couldn't search them, but anybody else was fair game. They could take your stuff, flip it over, see what you got, and then decide your taxes based off of that. Anybody who has that much power is liable to, corrupt it. And so oftentimes they would put extras on it and say, you owe this much, when you really, like, they would basically bribe you, make you owe more money than what you, not bribe you, but they would extort you, make you owe more money. They would say you owe more money than what you actually did, and they would keep that. There were records of whole villages, leaving in the middle of the night and going to another place to start a new village because they heard the tax collector was on their way. And if, let's say, for whatever reason, you had to pay taxes on your crop and your crop didn't come in for that year, or, it got taken and stolen or whatever, you still had to pay that money. They didn't care if you didn't have it. You had to pay that. And if you didn't, you were sent to prison. You were beaten. You were made a slave. Now, not like a slave in how America did black people slave, but a slave like you owe this. It's like a weight over your head. You owe this debt until it's paid off. Excuse me. And so a lot of times they would extort people. How long have I been recording, man? This is flowing. We here 31 minutes. Y'all are good. Yeah, and so like that. So people really didn't like tax collectors. And they would like oftentimes they would be local. So if the Roman government took over Israel, they would have Israelites serving as tax collectors, which is why a lot of people saw tax collectors as traitors, is because the people who collect the taxes knew that they shouldn't be doing this unjustly, and they were doing it anyway. So people had a problem with them. Indian people, tax collectors, blah, 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 29. When they heard Jesus' words, acknowledged that God's way was the right way because they had been baptized by John. So we're going back to earlier in Luke where people are wondering if John is the Messiah, and John outright says, I'm not the Messiah. There's one who's coming who I'm not even worthy to tie their sandals. I baptize you with water, but he's going to baptize you with the Holy Spirit and fire. Baptism is like a new way of showing things. It's like it's almost like a seal of approval. I believe what this person is saying, and here's my outward show of that. And so these people who are being baptized, they didn't have to see Jesus to know what Jesus was teaching and to believe what he was teaching and to follow that. And so those people who were baptized, who already had the outward show of what had been changed internally, good Lord, that was choppy. They had an outward display of what had been done internally in their heart, understood what Jesus was saying, and knew God's way was the right way. But the Pharisees and the experts of the law rejected God's purpose for themselves because they had not been baptized by John. Now, we know that Jesus was pretty popular among the people. So was John. John was very popular among the people. And the Pharisees followed popularity. Anything that could get them authority and popularity and win some brownie points with the people. And so their heart might not have been in the right place, but they did a lot of things that outwardly would show that it was. They would fast and let people know about it. They would pray loudly so that way people could hear them. They would drop money, mad money, like loud money inside the offering so that way people could see and hear. And so it probably wasn't unusual that they would come down and visit John to get baptized just so people could see that these Pharisees are kind of are falling in line with John, who they prefer and like and follow. You heard Jesus say, y'all went out to the wilderness to see this man. Y'all traveled. Y'all went out to this man because you heard what he was talking about and wanted to see for yourself. And so people must have liked him enough to go out there and try to figure out who he was and what he was talking about. And so that's probably why a lot of them, but John was cold. John was wrong. He was like, nah, I'm not baptizing y'all, you brood of vipers. You're not going to come out here and get this seal of approval from me when I know you not haven't done the change in your heart. So I'm not baptizing you. And they probably went away, all upset. But they didn't get baptized because their heart hadn't changed. And that's why they rejected, good Lord, could you imagine God having a purpose for your life? You rejected it anyway. That's why they rejected what God's purpose was in verse 30. Go to 31. To what can I compare the people of this generation? They're like children sitting in the marketplace and calling out to each other. We played the pipe for you, didn't dance. We sang a dirge for you, didn't cry. Don't know what that means. But he compares the people of this generation to children. And it looks like they have an expectation of some sort. Like, we did this and you didn't do what we thought you would do. We did that and you also didn't do what we thought you would do. Okay. So then he goes on to say, For John the Baptist came neither eating bread nor drinking wine. But you say he was a demon, and the Son of Man came both eating and drinking. You say that he's a glutton and a drunkard in front of the tax collectors and sinners. So pretty much what he's saying is like there is no winning. Like John the Baptist came and he fasted and ate locusts and honey and did all this crazy stuff, but he didn't indulge in the things that he could have, and you called him a weirdo. But then I'm doing that. I'm with the people. I'm doing the things that the people do to try to get a relationship with the people, so that way they could get a relationship with me. And you call me a drunk and somebody who is just taking advantage of these people and the times, and and who I can't win. Yeah, I understand what he said. I don't understand the context in which he's saying it. So I would really love the help on that. Anyway, 35, but wisdom is proved right by all her children. So if he's a demon, quote unquote, and I'm a drunk and a glutton, quote unquote, we are still preaching the same truth. And that truth is undeniable by whoever preaches it, whether you are crazy or whether you're of your right mind, whether you're super loud and obnoxious or whether you're kind of reserved and quiet. If you are following the same truth, whether you're a tax collector, a soldier, a person, a Pharisee, or a person who's been of the faith and they are keeping the faith, if all those people come together and follow the truth that is being preached by John and by Jesus, then that wisdom will show regardless of who you are, which is why it's so important for the body of Christ to come together. And it's so important that we take our personalities and use them to help each other, because you might not like how I'm doing this right now, or you might love it, but you might find somebody who is preaching right from the same Bible that I'm preaching, and you might like the way that they're doing it. And me and that other person might disagree about how we're doing it, or our personalities might clash or whatever, but we are coming from the same source. And because of that, we're showing the same wisdom that God wants us to show, and we're giving out the same wisdom that God wants the people to hear, regardless of our personality types. Anyway, that's what I took from it. It might not be right, but moving on. Jesus is anointed by the sinful woman. All right, so this sinful woman comes, and the Pharisee has a party at his place, like a little banquet or whatever, and it says Jesus is reclining at the table. Now, this is what I thought was interesting. When we see the picture of like the Last Supper, or we think about people sitting at a table, they're not sitting at a table like we traditionally do, where it's like the table that's raised maybe 3-4 feet off the ground, and then we have chairs that slide in, and then every person sits at a chair and does that awkward like little shuffle to get closer. What they had was more like floor seating. So they would have a table, but it was like maybe like 2 feet off the ground, 2 to 4 feet off the ground. But instead of sitting in a normal chair, they would have like a lounge, like a chaise lounge almost. And for those of you who don't know what a chaise lounge is, it's almost like a cot that's like comfy. And instead of laying down on it like you would a bed, you would have a pillow kind of under your arm, and you would like lean to one side, almost like how like people do at the beach. Like if you ever see people lay in the sand at the beach and they want to talk to each other, and they kind of like turn on their side, and they have their one arm in the ground so that way they could prop themselves up, and they have the other arm that's just kind of free. That's how people would, when it says that they reclined at the table, that's how people would sit. They would sit like on their side, and they would surround the table just like you would like a regular table, like with chairs and stuff like that. But everybody would be laying on their side, and they would eat with one hand while they prop themselves up with the other hand, and that's how they would do. And their feet would be off the ground. They would essentially be laying. And it's a tradition that it was inspired by the Roman culture, because they believed that it helped digestion to like lay in a certain way. And so, a lot of times, especially during like bigger meals, or like more expensive fancy meals, people would eat like this. And so when it says that, this woman poured perfume on his feet, it wasn't like she had to go under the table to do it. I mean, his feet were outside, like they were kind of far away from the table, the furthest point of his body from the table. So it was easy for this woman to pass by Jesus's feet and then just kind of prop up a chair, sit down, and do what she had to do. You know what I mean? But going back to the whole tears and everything, so she poured perfume on him, and I'm sure this perfume was crazy expensive. She wiped his feet with her hair, and she cried on him and stuff like that. And the Pharisee who invited him saw this. He said to himself, now he thought to himself, yo, if this dude was a prophet, the people say he is, then he would know the kind of woman that she is. And it's crazy how this man invited Jesus to his house, but then talks trash about Jesus. And it's going right back to what I was saying. Jesus has some popularity with the people. This man with some brownie points with the people, so he invites Jesus to his house, but he doesn't really believe in who Jesus is. Maybe he does, because it sounds like Jesus forgave him of his sins too. Going back, once we get a little further in this story here, but this man is still has like a hidden agenda, and you could tell based on how he's thinking. Jesus, being Jesus, knows what he's thinking and tells this parable of someone who is a money lender, and they have two people that they've lent money to. One who I'm gonna say dollars because I don't know how much a denarii is, but he lent one $50 and lent the other one $500. Neither of them could pay their money, and so he forgave the debts of both of them. Like I said, that was customary during that time. For after a certain point, I think it was 7 years or 20 years, I can't remember. But after a certain time period, any debt that you had was forgiven. And so this time period must have come and gone. And, the people who owed the money were so grateful because they didn't have to pay that money no more. Now, Jesus says to him, which one of them loves the money lender even more? And he goes, well, clearly the guy who owed more money because he was in more of a hole. And he goes, well, yeah, like you had the means to clean my feet. You could have given me water to clean my feet. You could have given me oil to put on my head. I don't know what the oil has to do, but during this time, people's feet were dirty. You know what I'm saying? They would be walking from town to town on dirt roads and stuff like that, and they'd have like sandals and stuff that they're walking on. And you rolling up into somebody's house, you got dust and all kind of bug juice and stuff on your feet. And just like you wipe your feet before you come in somebody's house now, they like wash their feet before they came in. But it's a party. And so it's probably mad people. This guy's probably supposed to have servants to, kind of stop people and wipe their feet before they walked inside. But they don't mind that. That's my computer. They talking about something, but it don't have anything to do with me right now. So don't even worry about that. But yeah. And this man didn't wipe his feet. Now he had the means for Jesus to wipe his feet, clearly because he's throwing this lavish party. But he didn't. This woman comes in. I'm not sure how this woman even got in because it sounds like this man doesn't even want this woman here. But she got in somehow. And, she got a reputation that's not so favorable among the people of her time and in her area. And it's, she kind of, people kind of look down on her. But she came in and she saw Jesus, and I'm sure she's heard about Jesus. I don't know if she's had any interaction with Jesus at this point. But she comes up to Jesus and she kisses his feet and she cries. And she washes his feet with her tears, and she don't have nothing to dry his feet but her hair. So she does that. She's using all this at her disposal to make sure that Jesus is taken care of. And that within itself is like a faith to know who Jesus is, to know you're not worthy, and to still do and serve even when you don't have the traditional things and resources to serve in a way that would be of a certain standard. You do what you can. And this woman it says that she's grateful because she has many sins. I'm not sure how she knew that she was forgiven, but Jesus forgave this woman because of how grateful and remorseful she was. And just, she knew that she needed to change her life, and she was making the steps to do that, even if people were still holding her to a standard of the life that she was living before. And that's amazing. I think that to me, what I took from that part is that, even when you don't think that you're doing the right thing, like my one of my children, asked me, like when you pray, you have to pray. She thought that you had to pray like before you eat every meal, and you can't really talk to God. But like there are times like there has to be a set time to talk to God, and we were kind of telling her that like, nah, you can kind of talk to God whenever. And like when you have the heart to come to God, however you are, you know what I'm saying? Whether you've just smoked, whether you've just, gotten drunk, whether you've just, slept with that person that you shouldn't have been, but you have that heart to change, God will still, based on your heart, will still hear you. Now, if you're just saying it just to like be like, I'm sorry, you know what I'm saying? And God's not hearing that. But if you're like, yo, like I really messed up. Like I keep doing this thing. I want to change, but I can't seem to get right. But like I know I need God. I know he's the one to help me cleanse my heart like David asked. He's the one like Jesus did to forgive my sins. You know what I'm saying? This is the person who I'm trying to change for. And I know I don't have it right, but I got to do something. And Jesus honors that. You know what I mean? So I thought that was beautiful. Anyway, that is the end of chapter 7. I hope you got something from it. Tomorrow I'll be doing chapter 8. This took, let me see, about 45 minutes. Hold on. Yeah, like 45 minutes. That's pretty solid. That's like a commute to work, depending on how far away if you live 45 minutes away from work. But yeah, hopefully you got something from it, and hopefully you'll be back for chapter 8.